Given the amount of money that's in online gaming these days, it's little surprise that developers funnel considerable resources into combating cheaters. Beyond the obvious solution of simply bringing the mighty ban hammer down upon mischievous players, these games came up with more novel means of dealing with hackers, bots, and other nefarious ne'er-do-wells. I'm Sai for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 genius ways video games fought cheaters. Number 10. Making modded cards explode upon entry. Grand Theft Auto Online. Trust Rockstar Games to come up with a totally hilarious way to flip the bird at cheating players. The Duke O'Death is an armoured muscle car in Grand Theft Auto 5, which originally was only available to those who upgraded from the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions of the game to PS4 and Xbox One copies. And more to the point, it could only be officially used in the single player portion, not Grand Theft Auto Online. However, in 2015, players found a way to hack the Duke O'Death into GTA Online, but rather than merely ban offending players, Rockstar came up with an altogether more emphatic way to give them a telling off. Basically, the developers patched the game to ensure that the Duke O'Death would instantly explode the moment that any player set foot in it, killing them instantly. On the one hand, it was an ironclad way to stop players from circumventing a restriction, and on the other, it sent a rather firm yet playful message to offending players that cheating wouldn't be tolerated. Number 9. Banning cheaters until they post an apology video. H1Z1. Battle Royale game H1Z1 encountered a serious problem with cheaters shortly after launching in early 2015, with over 25,000 players being banned in May of that year. At the same time, developer Daybreak Game Company's president John Smedley announced an outrageous initiative to discourage cheating, promising to only restore banned accounts if the culprits posted apology videos on YouTube citing remorse for their actions. Smedley revealed that he'd been sent many apologetic emails from affected players, but felt that this wasn't good enough, requesting a more intimate, personal video lamentation instead, which he could then retweet. Smedley added that he encouraged those who were apologising to direct their regrets to other gamers rather than the developers themselves, as he felt it was players who were truly suffering from most of their actions. Ultimately, the limited time offer came and went without many players taking Smedley up on it, which, while a bit of a shame, isn't really remotely surprising. Number 8. Hijacking their character in-game. Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 evidently doesn't suffer cheaters lightly and made one hell of an example out of one especially prolific rascal back in 2015. A player character by the name of JT Darkside reportedly spent around 3 weeks wreaking havoc throughout the massive multiplayer online gaming world, attacking other players and teleporting around the map with impunity. Players reported Darkside to developer AreaNet in swaths, and after a surprisingly lengthy period of inaction, they finally decided to act. But AreaNet didn't stop at merely banning the cheating player, they bodied him so thoroughly that it sent a triple stamped message to anybody else planning to ruin other players' fun with cheating ways. Guild Wars 2 security lead Chris Cleary eventually took to the game's official forums to reveal that not only had Darkside been banned, he'd been jettisoned from the game in the most comically theatrical manner possible. Cleary posted a video of him logging into Darkside's account, stripping his character naked, flinging him to his death, and then deleting both characters registered on his account. Needless to say, sympathy for Darkside was few and far between, even if this was an especially performative act of quite literally parading a cheater's humiliated corpse through the digital streets. Number 7. Sending Mr. Resetti to hassle save scummers. Animal Crossing. The Animal Crossing series allows players to cheat by quitting out of the game without saving, moving the system clock forward to the next day, and returning, letting them access replenished store stocks, amongst other things. However, players who quit the game without saving their progress will, upon reloading, be met by the supremely angry mole man, Mr. Resetti, whose central preoccupation is to pester players who attempt to exploit their way to riches and success. At first, Resetti will be polite but firm, but the more that you abuse the reset exploit, the more insistent and annoyed he'll get. His actions vary in severity and weirdness across games in the series. He might simply talk you to death for a few minutes, or force you to type responses back to him such as "forgive me" and "Resetti rules." The piece de resistance, though, is threatening to delete your entire save game as punishment for your abuses, yet after apparently doing so, it thankfully ends up being a fake out intended to scare the player straight. Number 6. Watermarking their health bar. Outriders. Online-only co-op action at Outriders may not have set the world on fire when it released in 2018, but developers People Can Fly did come up with a neat way to deter cheaters after encountering a higher than expected volume of them during the game's demo period. The devs issued a warning prior to the game's release that they could tell who was cheating while playing the demo, and vowed to permanently brand any re-offending players in the game proper with a discreet but visible spiderweb watermark on their HUD's health bar, forever outing them them as a bad egg. Given that Outriders isn't a PvP game, cheating perhaps wasn't as egregious as it could have been, but all the same, the hope was that permanently altering a player's HUD robbed them of the glory of posting screen grabs of their in-game accomplishments. Considering that players are only likely to cheat at Outriders for vanity reasons, to boast to others how far ahead they are, this was a pretty inventive way to invalidate that and make the cheaters consider the ultimate futility of their actions. Number 5, the Bovine Defense Force Initiative, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Within days of The Witcher 3's release, players discovered an exploit which allowed them to quickly amass crowns by killing cows in White Orchard Village, looting their hides, meditating to trigger a respawn, and then repeating the process all over again. CD Projekt Red quickly caught wind of players sneakily enriching themselves though, and a few weeks later released a patch which gave those taking advantage of the exploit a rather nasty surprise indeed. The patch resulted in players who killed 6 cows being suddenly faced with a mighty level 27 Chort spawning in front of them, an extremely powerful cow-like monster who could easily make short work of unprepared players. In the original version of the patch, Chorts would continually keep spawning even if the player managed to kill one, with the developers dubbing it the Bovine Defense Force Initiative, which is a fantastic band name by the way. Hilariously, some players realised that if they were strong enough to kill the Chorts, this could help them farm crowns even faster than with the cow exploit, and so CD Projekt Red later altered it to only spawn a single Chort. Number 4, modding bots to only attack cheaters, Team Fortress 2. Team Fortress 2 has always had a substantial problem with cheaters, though that reached a fever pitch in 2020 when Valve's official servers became flooded with bots using cheats to disrupt genuine gameplay. These were typically programmed to use Aimbots, spam the in-game chat, vote to kick legit players out, and even cause the server to lag. Naturally, this pissed off players who, dissatisfied with Valve's apparent inability to cope with tidal waves of bots, took matters into their own hands. Later that year, players resorted to inserting their own cheat bots into Team Fortress 2 servers, yet these were only programmed to target malevolent cheat bots and leave genuine players alone. It was a magical case of fighting fire with fire, of effectively creating Terminator-like bots to take down other nuisance bots. While many understandably decried Valve's ongoing failure to address the problem infrastructurally, this was nevertheless a spectacularly smart idea on the part of enterprising, frustrated players. Number 3, letting other players publicly execute them, EVE Online. If there's one thing you can't deny about EVE Online, it's that those who play it take it super seriously and above all else won't abide the effort of anyone treating it like a joke. Developers CCP Games also haven't taken lightly any attempts to undermine their meticulously constructed space sim, and in 2018 even organised a public execution of cheating players. One of the most common methods of cheating involves using a bot to farm in-game currency all day long, providing offenders with a substantial advantage over honest players who have to, you know, leave the computer to work, eat, exercise and actually deal with other human beings. Between this and the potential for mass botting to destabilise the game's fragile economy, CCP typically offers cheaters a warning before banning their account on a second offence. But 5 years ago, a series of spaceships owned by cheating players were teleported into neutral space, and players en masse were invited to show up to give them one hell of a shellacking. And boy, that they did. By the end of the massacre, more than 150 players had assembled to destroy the fleet of ships trotted out by CCP staffers, and when the ritual was repeated a week later, more than 700 strong showed up to obliterate a cheater's Titan, one of the most powerful ships in the game. Glorious. Number 2, creating invisible enemies to detect aimbots, Call of Duty. The Call of Duty franchise has certainly come up with its fair share of clever methods for dealing with cheaters, but Activision has truly outdone themselves with their latest gambit. The publisher recently announced an update to their Ricochet anti-cheat software which governs all contemporary Call of Duty games. This adds a new anti-cheat mechanic which introduces hallucinations to multiplayer games, fake invisible enemies cloned from actual players in the game. While in no way affecting play for regular gamers, these digital phantoms would instantly trigger cheating mechanisms like Aimbot, in turn outing cheaters without any room for doubt whatsoever. As traps to catch cheaters go, that's incredibly smart and creative. Simply banning cheaters is one thing, but completely obliterating the very foundation of their cheating is another, to ensure that they can't help but reveal their dirty little secrets. Number 1, banishing cheaters to their own playlist, Fall Guys. Containment is an interesting solution for developers to prevent cheaters from ruining the game for honest players, yet without banning offenders outright and losing their custom. And so Fall Guys developers Mediatonic once introduced a Cheater Island, a secret playlist for cheaters to compete against one another, free to out-cheat their opponents in the pursuit of that ever-precious crown. According to Mediatonic, at first, Cheater Island lacked enough concurrent players to consistently fill up matches, but over time their pool of cheaters became surprisingly large, and so the secret playlist was open in earnest. However, the developer ultimately decided that there were too many cheaters to tolerate, and so decided to swiftly close their experiment down, instead handing out blanket bans to offending players, with the game subsequently adopting Epic Games' more robust anti-cheat measures. Mediatonic's own Twitter account said of the matter, "Our cheat detection system was good, but we hadn't expected so many players, and we had no idea the lengths that some would go to cheat."
Cheating means different things to different players, and for most people, if you're not doing it in an online multiplayer type setting, it's kind of all good. I mean, no one really minds what you're doing in your own single-player walled-off experience. It's all in good fun, right? All the same, the sheer pervasiveness of cheating in games has forced developers to get smart and devise some truly mesmerizing means to punish and defend their games against cheaters. Following up on our previous list on the subject, here comes another 10 games which did something truly unique, creative, and perhaps even hilarious while battling cheaters of all kinds. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 10 more genius ways video games fought cheaters. Number 10. The Nude cheat makes Lara explode instead. Tomb Raider 2. In the case of the Tomb Raider franchise, developers' core design weren't so much bothered about players cheating to beat the original game. They included cheat codes in it after all, but rather their dogged fascination with a mythic nude cheat. After the first Tomb Raider game took the world by storm in 1996, legends started to spread that there was indeed a cheat code where you could see Lara Croft sans clothing. Without any such cheat being uncovered though, modders took matters into their own hands, creating a Nude Raider patch for the PC version of the game, which indeed allowed players to run around as Lara in the buff. Core Design weren't particularly thrilled about this, and so devised a novel solution of sorts, trolling the hell out of anyone trying to input the supposed nude cheat in Tomb Raider 2. Word quickly did the rounds, as probably spread by the devs themselves, that the sequel did include and accept the nude cheat. It was even printed in a bunch of gaming magazines at the time. But the twist? Inputting the sequence instead resulted in Lara spontaneously exploding in mid-air, effectively flipping the bird to thirsty players in hilariously tongue-in-cheek fashion. Number 9. Cheaters are put on trial and pelted with tomatoes. Runescape. In 2012, more than a decade after MMORPG RuneScape released, developers Jagex released a new area in the game called Botany Bay. It was effectively a prison where players caught using bots and hacks to automate play were put on trial in front of an assembled crowd of their human peers. The bot finder general would give the offending player a scathing verbal dressing down, all while they're pelted with rotten tomatoes by players, before the general finds them guilty and asks all players present to vote on their fate. The possible outcomes would include being crushed from above, eaten by a worm, or incinerated. The first time a player is caught botting, they'll receive a 24-hour ban, followed by a 48-hour ban on a second offense, and on their third infraction, they'll be permanently banned. That's pretty damn fair, honestly, giving transgressive players 3 opportunities to get on the straight and narrow before casting them into the digital abyss. Number 8. The Taxman comes after money cheaters. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. In our previous list, we told you how developers CD Projekt Red released the Bovine Defense Force initiative to try and combat players using a glitch in The Witcher 3. But the developer truly outdid themselves when it came to broadly dealing with anyone using money cheats to get ahead. With the release of the Hearts of Stone expansion a few months after the main game, players who amassed a certain amount of currency, a figure most certainly achieved by cheating, would be approached by Walthamore Mitty, Deputy Tax Enumerator, who needs answers for your inexplicably accrued wealth. Mitty will grill you about whether you engaged in illicit sales of hides and pearls through exploits, and if you denied taking part, he'll deem you in good standing. If you're honest, dumb, or curious enough to fess up though, he'll slap you with a fine to deal with your misgivings. While this is ultimately more of a funny nod towards players abusing The Witcher 3's various money exploits, it's still a totally ingenious way for CD Projekt Red to both acknowledge their own mistakes and gently chide players for being so damn greedy. Number 7. Barbatos destroys you if you try to auto-level. Tales of Destiny Director's Cut. Granted, grinding is not the most invigorating activity you can do in any video game, so it's hard to ding players who decide to get involved in it in order to press themselves higher up in levels. In the original release of the PS2 remake of RPG Tales of Destiny, players discovered they could auto-level their party by simply setting all the characters to auto and tapping one of the controller's analog sticks down, causing them to run around the map in circles and continually fight random battles. But for the 2008 Director's Cut, Namco Tales Studios came up with a brilliantly devious solution that would stop players from fully automating the leveling process. One that's tough not to respect, honestly. After 20 minutes of automated play, the villain of the game, Barbatos, will rock up and say, "What are you fools running in circles for?" before initiating a battle. Now, the ultra-powerful Barbatos also makes it clear that the only way to survive the fight is to flee, but if you're letting the game level up so idly, you obviously won't be around to see the message. And so Barbatos will wipe the damn floor with your party in record time, causing a game over and preventing the player from auto-leveling. Hell, the game over screen is even preceded by a patronizing message saying the game heroes were never heard of again. Ouch. It's so simple to just monitor the player's inputs, and yet so clever. As annoying as it might be for a developer to inhibit grinding, the execution is cool enough here to make it mostly forgivable. Number 6. The crowd throws cheese at you for cheesing Tiny Tiger. Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. If you're familiar with the original release of Crash Bandicoot 3, then you might remember there's a pretty popular method for cheesing the Tiny Tiger boss fight in the Colosseum. If you run to the top left corner of the screen, you can easily avoid the fleets of lions which periodically come stampeding at the top of the arena. It's a well-known exploit, basically a cheat, which makes it considerably easier to deal with Tiny without having to worry about dodging those pesky rampaging lions. For 2017's Insane Trilogy, however, most players expected to just be able to abuse the cheat again consequence-free, but they got a rather hilarious surprise as a result. Going to the top left corner this time results in the Colosseum's patrons hurling giant chunks of cheese at you. As in, you're cheesing the boss. Get it? Granted, in this case, the remaster's developers, Vicarious Visions, were clearly just having some fun with fans, because they could have easily removed the exploit if they wanted. Instead, they did let players cheat away while gently ribbing them for doing so. Number 5. Support characters guilt trip you during battle. Persona 3. If all else fails, there's always the solution of straight up guilt tripping players and making the act of cheating so annoying they just might want to stop doing it. And so we have Persona 3, which had a bizarre yet brilliant surprise for players who used cheats to access party members or personas who weren't yet legitimately available. Prolonged complaints from your support characters. You'll likely hear the likes of Mitsuru and Fuka say things like, "You're cheating, I'll have to punish you. I trusted you, I can't believe you cheated. I'm very disappointed in you. Cheaters never win," and "You're cheating." Other than this, the game doesn't do anything to prevent you from hacking away to your heart's content, but after a good while of listening to your buddies chide you for being a dirty little cheat, it might actually start to get to you. When nothing else works, psychological warfare it is. Number 4. A fan made fake cheats to troll cheaters. Counter-Strike Global Offensive. When developers can't seem to stem the tide of cheating themselves, leave it to dedicated players with time on their hands to get to work instead. Counter-Strike Global Offensive's cheating epidemic apparently became too much for YouTuber Script Kid, who in 2020 gained a reputation for creating fake cheating software to entrap, embarrass, and ultimately disable cheaters. In an impressively dedicated ruse, Script Kid created some bogus software and paid out of his own pocket to advertise it on Google, ensuring that cheating players looking for some new hacks would download it. But Script Kid's program would instead hijack the cheater's game and wreak havoc with a series of punishments. These included forcing the player to throw a flashbang or grenade at their own feet, auto-shooting on their teammates, shooting at the ceiling, and so on. Basically, the goal was to clearly ruin the cheater's experience and render them a laughingstock, or make them even enough of an annoyance that they get kicked by players for actually wanting to play the game properly. Genius. Number 3, the god of death Doom publicly erases cheaters from existence. Guild Wars. We've previously detailed how Guild Wars 2 dealt with one especially egregious cheater by hijacking his account, stripping him naked, killing him, and then deleting his account before posting the video online for players to savor. But the original game was no slouch in the punishment department either, with an equally theatrical method of dealing with cheaters by straight up cutting them down in front of the rest of the server. Developers ArenaNet released an update in 2010 which would cause any flagged cheaters to be suddenly confronted by Doom, the game's god of death, who with one swing of his scythe insta-kills the offending player, resulting in their accounts either being suspended or permanently banned. To see this happening while going about your business in Guild Wars was certainly unexpected and amazing, and a reminder of what cheating might cost you. Number 2, controller inputs are disabled if you use auto-fire. Metal Gear Solid. Late in the original Metal Gear Solid, Solid Snake is captured by Revolver Ocelot and strapped into an electroshock torture rack, as the player is forced to button mash their way through a series of increasingly difficult sequences intended to test their nimbleness. If you can't button mash hard enough to keep Snake's life bar filled until the timer runs out, then you submit to the torture, resulting in Meryl's death at the end of the game. Before the torture starts though, Ocelot makes a point of telling you, don't even try using auto-fire, I'll know. In the quaint meta-averse gaming era of 1998, it was positively surreal to hear a game's villain break the fourth wall and tell the player that using an unofficial controller with auto-fire capability, in turn completely trivializing button mashing, wouldn't work well for them. And this wasn't merely an empty threat which Hideo Kojima placed in the game to deter cheating. He did indeed have the sequence programmed to recognize auto-fire controllers that were firing above a certain inputs per second rate. If the game recognizes an auto-fire controller, it'll suddenly kill the player's inputs entirely, and even when the torture timer hits 0, the electrocution continues until Snake dies, triggering a game over. You gotta admit, it's a very Hideo Kojima way of getting one over on cheaters, that's for sure. Number 1, using the Doom cheat codes gives the opposite effect. Heretic. Now, in fairness to id Software, it's clear from their history they're not exactly against cheaters, they just like poking a little fun at them. Case in point, we have Heretic, an authorized Doom clone with a fantasy sheen that was released just a year after Doom, and one which had a surprise in store for anyone who attempted to reuse the legendary FPS's cheat codes. In Doom, entering IDDQD would grant the player God mode, but doing it in Heretic hilariously had the exact opposite effect. You'd instantly drop dead on the spot in a pile of gore. To add insult to injury, a message would appear at the top of the screen that read, "Trying to cheat, huh? Now you die." That's not the only one though. Type in Doom's code to unlock all weapons, ammo, and keys, IDKFA, and you'll lose all weapons and ammo except for your staff, with another taunting message telling you, "Cheater, you don't deserve weapons." To actually activate God mode and unlock all weapons and ammo, you had to seek out different cheat codes specific to Heretic, rather than just expecting to recycle Dooms. If nothing else, this felt like Raven Software was clapping back against people saying that Heretic was just a Doom clone, straight down to not using the same cheat codes.
Although modern gaming has tried its damnedest to stamp out cheaters, it's been an undeniable part of the medium's DNA since its inception, with players keenly finding ways to circumvent traditional gameplay with or without the developers' help. But sometimes the devs get pretty creative in the ways in which they absolutely trounce cheaters. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 creative ways that video games fought cheaters. Number 10. Creating honeypot data which only cheaters could read. Dota 2. Now earlier this year, Valve announced that they brought the ban hammer down on 40,000 Dota 2 players who have been caught using third-party software to cheat in the hugely popular MOBA game, and Valve's method for catching them was quite genius indeed. They updated the game with a digital honeypot, a segment of data hidden inside the game's code which could never be read by a regular honest player not using cheats, but would be read by a player using software to assist them. This gave Valve absolute certainty that all 40,000 banned players players were unambiguously guilty of cheating, while further asserting that they made their efforts known to effectively act as a deterrent and assure offending players that they will be caught eventually. While more ambitious Dota 2 cheaters will likely be looking into ways to circumvent this clever anti-cheating mod, it was certainly effective in ridding the game of a large swathe of ill-intentioned ne'er-do-wells. Number 9. Corrupting all of your save files. Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria. Now, Dota 2's anti-cheat crusade feels incredibly generous compared to the utterly savage manner in which Valkyrie Profile 2 ruins some cheaters' days, and does so in a game without any online functionality no less. The game shipped with an anti-cheat software called GameGuard, which can defect when players are using cheats, and follows up by corrupting your save file. If that's bad enough, the corruption doesn't show up until late in the game, luring players into a false sense of security before having it continually crash. Oh, and by the way, it gets worse than that. If you're using multiple save files in an attempt to outwit GameGuard, well, you're also screwed, as the corruption will affect all save files on your memory card as it's tied to the overall game system file. As such, to play a clean run of the game, you'd need to delete every Valkyrie Profile 2 save, including system files, from your memory card. On one hand, that is one hell of an aggressive and creative way to fight cheaters, but on the other, talk about overkill. Number 8. The Receptionist shames you over the PA system. Theme Hospital. On the decidedly less punitive end of the spectrum, we have the utterly delightful Theme Hospital, which rather than threaten the integrity of your save file, rather gently shames you for using cheats. Now, to be clear, Bullfrog's legendary hospital sim has a built-in cheat functionality, allowing you to enrich yourself, gain equipment, skip forward in time, and even cause an emergency. So the team clearly wasn't seriously bothered about you using some cheats. Yet as a cheeky admonishment for cheaters, they'd be called out by the hospital's receptionist, who would loudly and enthusiastically announce over the building's PA system, "The hospital administrator is cheating." Granted, within the context of the game world itself, you have to wonder what the hell that would even mean to anyone who hears the announcement. All the same, it's a small price to pay for being able to increase your bank balance by $10,000 with a single button press. Number 7. Elements disappear when the game is paused. Mario Party. Sometimes the most elegantly simple solutions are the most brilliantly effective, and in the case of the Mario Party franchise, Nintendo realized that players could cheese some of the memory-based minigames by simply hitting the pause button and waiting until they had memorized everything on screen. And so, in many of the series' games, the respective visual elements will actually disappear from the screen while the game is paused, and only reappear when it's unpaused, in turn preventing players from abusing the pause feature to net themselves an easy win. In fact, Mario Party isn't the only Nintendo franchise to do this. Pausing the WarioWare games during minigames will cause the screen to be plunged into total darkness, ensuring that you can't take advantage of the pause screen. On the surface, this might seem like an incredibly straightforward remedy to a most basic level of cheating, and yet, how many other games have actually bothered to implement it? Number 6. Valve gifted a golden halo to anyone who didn't cheat. Team Fortress 2. If gamers en masse have proven anything over the years, it's that they're incredibly susceptible to FOMO, and so when all else fails, developers can exploit that to punish cheaters. Though perhaps not egregious as cheating goes, Team Fortress 2 did nevertheless have a problem with players using idling programs to exploit the game's item drop system, where weapons or cosmetic items would be regularly given to players whilst playing online. Idling programs such as Steam Stats were able to mimic the game's engine and allow players to receive item drops while not actually playing the game, and these programs proved hugely popular and were ultimately used by a large chunk of the player base. In September 2009, however, Valve decided enough was enough and released an update which gave a special item to anyone who hadn't used idling programs, a golden halo hilariously called the Cheater's Lament. The halo also came complete with the message, "Congratulations, your honesty has been rewarded with a new hat." Naturally, hackers were a bit miffed that they had to miss out on this shiny treat, and in the years that followed, Valve made several changes to the item drop system which made idling decidedly less effective, such as forcing players to confirm a new item before being able to receive another one. Number 5. Forcing you to fight many versions of the final boss. Crusader No Regret. Classic isometric action game Crusader No Remorse allowed players to enter the code Jessica16 in order to activate cheat mode. The players expecting to simply repeat the cheat on sequel Crusader No Regret were in for a nasty surprise. Enter Jessica16 this time around and you'll be greeted with the message, "Of course we changed the cheats, duh." But because that that wasn't enough of an admonishment, the final boss, Chairman Dragon, will suddenly pipe up saying, "I've been waiting a long time for this," before you're transported into a giant room where 8 versions of a mech suit wearing Dragon start relentlessly firing rockets at you. Oh, and you've got no cover at all to speak of, and the battle is scored by a bunch of Christmas-themed songs, because this Easter egg could also be accessed by non-cheating players on Christmas Day. Defeating the 8 bosses is incredibly challenging, but not impossible. But to further thumb its nose at players who try to recycle the previous game's cheats, even if you do triumph, you'll suddenly combust into a pile of gore at the conclusion of the fight. The sequel did, however, have its own bespoke cheat code, Loose Cannon 16. Evidently, the devs just wanted to poke a little fun at lazy players who figured that they'd just use the exact same codes again. Number 4. Lottery cheaters got locked out until they paid a fine. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. In Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, players can take part in the Happy Lucky Lottery, a lottery hosted by a bulky bob-omb called Lucky. Tickets can be purchased for 100 coins, and if the RNG gods are smiling down on you, you might end up winning. But because dumb luck isn't enough for some players, the lotto can be cheated by moving the GameCube's clock forward to midnight, allowing players to see the winning number and then move their clock back to a normal time. Yet doing so will result in that day's lotto being suspended, at which point Lucky informs you that foul play is afoot and that the lottery's clock has been tampered with. Lucky will then straight up ask you if you are the culprit, and if you confess, he'll have a full-on breakdown before insisting that you purchase a new ticket at the princely cost of 500 coins, effectively fining you for your dishonest behaviour. Number 3. Your opponents are notified if game data is modified. Spacewood Ho! Classic sci-fi strategy game Spacewood Ho came up with an elegantly simple but quite delicious solution to deal with players who tried to do the most dishonourable of things, and that is cheat during multiplayer matches. The scoundrels! Simply put, the game would just drop all the pleasantries and grass you up to the opposing players. According to the game's chief designer Joe Williams, the dev team worked hard to ensure that if they couldn't stop players cheating in multiplayer games outright, at least they could ensure that other players knew exactly what they were up against. And so, if the game detects any sudden changes in a player's stats or game data, the other players will be informed that they are playing against a damn dirty cheater. Williams amusingly went on to point out that if you're cheating against the CPU though, there's no such penalty, for obvious reasons. Number 2. A player hacked the leaderboards and begged Nintendo to implement anti-cheat. Splatoon 2. When developers won't deal with cheaters, players might actually feel compelled to take matters into their own hands, and that's precisely what happened with Splatoon 2. In 2018, one player became exasperated enough with the game's online multiplayer being so infested with cheaters that they decided to send Nintendo a message, and they did this by cheating themselves, and they cheated big. The player took it upon themselves to hack their game's online leaderboards, editing their X-Power numbers so that they appeared in the top 4 spots of the leaderboard with the player names "Please add anti-cheat." Get it? The person responsible even took to Reddit to elaborate that they're a huge fan of the game, but were dissatisfied with Nintendo's refusal to implement sufficient anti-cheat measures. Nintendo predictably responded by banning the individual from Splatoon 2's online play, though their clever gambit actually ended up working, as about a month later, the company also began implementing more robust anti-cheat measures. This also carried through to the recent release of Splatoon 3, when Nintendo took a far more proactive approach in banning cheating players. And number 1, the old money cheat gets you a high-interest loan instead. SimCity 2000. 1989, SimCity memorably allowed players to receive an instant loan of $10,000 by holding shift and typing fund, albeit with the caveat that getting greedy and entering the cheat 3 times in a single game year would trigger an earthquake. For the sequel, SimCity 2000, Maxis decided to have a little fun with players simply expecting to use the money cheat again, because this time typing fund would give players a bond with an excruciating 25% interest rate. Yikes. It was a clever subversion of player expectations for sure, albeit one which unintentionally, hilariously backfired for Maxis, given that players soon discovered a way around to exploit this for their own material gain. Basically, if you take out 2 25% cheat bonds in a row and then issue a real bond with a 0% interest rate, your total interest rate will be negative, meaning that the bank basically ends up paying you a $1.5 million stipend every game year. Amazing.